episode, we are going to be talking about the dreaded Etsy seller burnout. Have you felt like that? Have you felt like you are just constantly trying to figure everything out, or you're trying to constantly add new products, or tweak your SEO, or find the keywords, or customer service, or you're being told that you got to keep loading or uh, finding products and uploading them and every single day because that's what Etsy wants. Is that what you're feeling? Burnout? Yeah, I know it's real. And that's what we're going to talk about today because it is a big deal. And I am a huge believer in mental health being the number one thing that we should be trying to focus on to allow ourselves to not feel that burnout. And take it from me, I have experienced burnout a couple of different times. I'm going to share with you a time in 2019 that I felt it and I went through it, and I'll tell you what I did about it. And that was building a business, not necessarily an Etsy business, but it was a e-commerce business along with everything else that I was doing, and kind of what I do now. So I avoid that. And I think a lot of times it's just being aware. And we are going to cover that in today's episode because I believe it is really, really important. And I would like to know from you right now, before we get into 5 areas that I'm going to cover with you to help you avoid this or help you deal with it if you are dealing with it right now, which is what I want to ask you. Are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling like you're just frustrated because you're doing everything and you're busy, but you're not getting the results? And you're just feeling like, oh my gosh, should I keep going here? Is that what you're feeling? If you are, leave that in the comments. Let me know, does this resonate with you? Because I want to know. I want to help you. Chris is here also to help you because I believe that a lot of times we think if we're busy, then we are trying harder. And I fall into that camp even to this day. If I'm not doing something, I feel like I might not be working on the business, or I might not be trying as hard as I should be, or other people are working harder because we're in this hustle mindset. And I'm here to tell you, we don't have to be, because there are things that we can do and that we can focus on so we can avoid that and still build a thriving business and at least know that what we're working on matters. So Chris, with that all being said, burnout, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. How did I do on setting them?
I think you nailed it right there at the end, Scott. And I think the biggest thing, especially for entrepreneurs, whether you're on Etsy, whatever you are doing, is that we feel like we have to be doing something for whatever reason. And I don't know if it's because it's how we were taught in school. I don't know if it's because that's like your typical 9-to-5 job is much more like you're worried about your boss seeing you. And so if you're not doing something that's actively productive, that you're somehow just lazy and not doing anything. And I think one of the biggest problems that people have is they don't understand that the mental side of this is also work, right? If I'm not sitting down in front of my computer designing something, I'm definitely not doing anything to move my business forward, even if it's me thinking about what I want my business to be. Guess what, y'all? That's work, right? Everything that we do around our business, whether it's something that's actually productive or just thinking about what we want our business to be, thinking about some things that we can do better, even if we're not sat in front of the computer, clicking around on Etsy, looking at data, clicking around in Canva and creating a new design, anything that's related to your business is work. And it all adds up, especially Scott, if you're making some of the mistakes that we're going to be talking about here today. And I think some of the biggest ones have come out, some of the guru myths that we've talked about, right? About how the only way to do this is to launch 1 million products and some of those kinds of things. And I think that really does contribute to burnout because you feel like if you haven't launched your 1,000th product this month, that you are somehow a failure.
Totally.
And I think one of the things that's interesting, and I know where you're going with the story, at least I assume I know where you're going with the story because I know the story. I was there and I lived through the story with you, is that you don't have to feel that way. And sometimes avoiding the burnout by doing less actually results in more focus, more energy, and better overall results. So I don't want to just hit that nail on the head over and over again, but let's dive into some of those mistakes that we see people making, some of the reasons that people get burnt out faster, and some of the ways that people can really start to avoid that.
Yeah, no, it's great. And before we do jump into all of that, we've been getting a lot of comments basically saying, Chris, what's up, man? You got the summer cut, you got a fresh look, you got a clean look. What's up with the hair? Let's just address that right out of the gate. If you guys are, I guess regular viewers, you probably noticed Chris is trying to compete with me on hair now, and his hair is actually shorter than mine. What's up with that, Chris?
Yeah, I got tired of Jimmy Neutron, so I went more for like Professor X. Just full on Cerebro. No, it's funny, Scott. We're talking about burnout today. I got burnt out trying to get somebody to cut my hair, so I just decided to take it down. I have a trimmer at home. Why not? I've done it in the past. I know it doesn't look like hot garbage, at least in my opinion, because I have a funny enough shaped head that I can pull off the Mr. Clean Professor X look. So I just went for it, and I got to tell you, and I think you know this because you keep it pretty short. The first 2 or 3 days were weird. I'd like wake up in the morning and I'd have to go check the mirror to make sure I wasn't totally a mess, and then realize that I didn't have hair. And now, like, the shower is faster. Getting ready to do anything is faster. I'm gonna keep it this way for a little while, at least until I get tired of this, and then we'll go back to something else, assuming I can still grow hair at that point.
Time will tell. Baby got back had said, smooth operator. That's Chris's new theme song. All right, let's get down to some business. And I mean, really though, it's funny that we talked about like how you eliminated something that was, and we were kind of being funny about you being burnout with it, but it is something that adds to your life, right? Like something like that could reduce the amount of stress that you are going through. And I know that it seems kind of silly that we're talking about that, but part of this whole thing is probably you unpacking and really seeing like, what am I doing? Like, what am I spending my time on? And I think that is a big one. That's not even on my list of 5, by the way, but it's actually a really good activity to do, to sit down and really try to unpack what are you working on, and asking yourself, am I working on something that will move the business forward? Is it something that I am working on because I'm avoiding doing something that I should be working on? Or am I chasing that, I guess the shiny object because someone just said that I should be selling tumblers and I'm not, and I got to jump on that train? Is that what we're dealing with? And so those a lot of times, I think doing an inventory or an unpacking of what you're working on, put it down on paper and see exactly what are you spending your time on and why are you feeling the burnout. So I am going to share that story with you really quick because I think it's important. And it doesn't matter if we are working on Etsy, if we're working on an Amazon business, if we're a podcaster, if we're a YouTuber. I mean, YouTube, a lot of YouTubers become burnout because they're on the hamster wheel of constantly creating content. I started to feel that actually about a year ago. And that's when I decided, you know what we're going to do? And some of you may or may not know this, but I was creating 3 videos a week on top of the live. And I said, wait a minute here. How can I make this so it's not so demanding? So it's not so much work. And I came up with what we're doing here today. We are doing a live. And in this live, you are going to notice that we are going to have these other subtopics that we talk about. Those subtopics become their own videos. So now I'm creating content in this one sitting. So I only have to sit down here for 90 minutes or even 2 hours a week. And I'm pretty much done with that. Before, I was spending 6-7 hours on a video between shooting it, starting, stopping, editing, getting it uploaded, all of those things. That's just an example. And I'm just using that because a lot of people can understand like social media. That can be like an overwhelming, like a burnout thing where you think like, I got to keep posting. I know people that we've done audits for. They're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I got to be on social media or on Pinterest, or I got to, be on Instagram. And that becomes burnout because then you feel like you got to keep feeding the thing. Or I'm on Etsy and I heard that you're supposed to post at least 1 new listing every single day. And then all of a sudden you feel like I got to keep doing this. I got to keep the thing going. And if I don't, it's going to all go away. And those are the things that really, really, I guess, bring us into, the burnout stage, or, that the whole trap of like trying to do too much or thinking we have to do too much. So back to the story. It was about 2018, 2019. I forget the exact time it was. But some of you know, I started a podcast, back in 2015 and end of 14 into 15 and started that. And I was doing 3 episodes a week. And that there was also alongside, I was building my Amazon, shop at the time, or Amazon business, e-commerce business. It started as Amazon, turned into an e-commerce. And basically I was doing that too at the same time. And so here, think about this, you're running an Etsy shop. I'm running an Amazon business at the time. Now my wife's running the Etsy thing and I'm doing what we're doing here at Brand Creators. And what happened is the podcast took off. It was crushing. I mean, we had first year, I think we had over 5 million downloads, which was great. And we were getting upwards of, I think 20,000, 30,000 downloads an episode, which was awesome. But that also gave me opportunities to speak at other events, to then have people want me to coach them, for me to write a book, which I did, to have my own live event. And so all of this stuff was happening, plus the other business, the e-commerce business is happening. I got a partner in that. Everything is happening. And it was great for a minute, but then I felt like I had to keep pushing. I had to keep going. And then I got shingles. And the doctor said, "Are you under a lot of stress?" And I go, "I don't think so, but I do feel like I'm, doing 100 different things all at once. And if I stop, it's all going to go away." I didn't say that to him, but basically that's what I was thinking. And then my wife said, "Listen, you've got to slow down. Like, you have to slow down." I'm like, "Yeah, but if I do, then this person over here, they're going to outperform me and they're going to take my audience." And all of the doubts, right? The self-doubt start to come in because you're not doing enough. And so I kind of toned it down, but not so much. And then about 6 months later, I was running a $25,000 per year mastermind with Chris. And we had 10 people in that mastermind. And we were running it. That was a tremendous amount of stress because here, people are paying us for a year's worth of coaching. And now we have to deliver. And it was just stressful because I want to make people happy. And then there's these commitments and travel and all this stuff. And I got the shingles again. And then my wife said, "Okay, whoa. Like, I want you to be around. Your kids want you to be around." So this was taking a toll on my health. And so from that day forward, I started to work on myself, not feeling I had to more or less, I don't want to say compete, but compare to other people, because what you see a lot of times isn't necessarily what it is in reality, right? We all know Instagram is fake, right? As far as like people are putting on their best stuff most of the time. And the reason why I'm sharing the story with you, yes, it has nothing to do with Etsy, but it has to do with trying to do too much or thinking you have to do more in order to be successful. And at the end of the day, you don't. But what you do have to do, and this is what this taught me, is I really had to reevaluate what I'm doing. What am I shooting for? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then what is going to make me happy? But then also, what are the pieces that I need to focus my time on? And how can I create a workflow or a daily workflow, weekly workflow? How can I create something that's going to allow me to not have as much stress, but still grow a business and also do what makes me happy? And so I had to go through that in order to identify what I really wanted, but also a wake-up call. And when we were doing an Etsy shop audit about a couple of weeks ago, and the woman that we were doing the audit for had said, "I'm just feeling so burnt out." And the minute she said that, I was like, it was almost like I heard it and it brought me back to burnout. And I'm like, whoa. And I said right then and there, I said, we need to do an episode on YouTube and we need to share burnout and how to deal with it. Because that's what we were doing with this lady, is we were helping her with burnout by really looking at the business at like what matters the most and what's the main drivers here. What should you be focusing your time on? Because I'm a big believer in being busy isn't always your best use of time. You can probably get done everything you need to do in a couple of hours versus spending 6 to 8 hours. A lot of times it's wasted time. But we think we're helping the business because we're still working on the business, which doesn't always work, which most of the time it doesn't work. So I wanted to share that with you guys because I wanted to be open and transparent and let you guys know, like, it's real and it can really take a toll on you. It also can test you and test your motivation. It can test your discipline. And this is when it really comes down to unpacking where you are right now. Even if you feel like you got things handled, I still think it's a good practice to unpack what you're doing on a regular basis and see where can you make adjustments to lessen the amount of stress, lessen the amount of work that you think you have to do, and really work on the things that drive the business forward. Okay. So with that all being said, Chris, is there any questions or feedback or comments? Let me know.
Yeah, so I actually had this conversation, or a variation, Scott, of this conversation yesterday, and I want to get your opinion on this because I'm starting to see it pop up in the chat. And if you want to tell me that we'll save this for later, feel free. But you just mentioned something that ticked this off for me. So you said, everything we feel like we're doing feels like we're working on the business. And some days, and I know it happens to me, I'm sure it probably happens to you too, you just wake up and you don't feel like doing anything. And that then really starts that flywheel of feeling like a failure, feeling like you never do enough. So how do you know that what you are doing needs to be done? And again, if you want to talk about this later, feel free to let me know, but I'm starting to see that pop up. And it's a variation on the same conversation that I had yesterday, because you're not always going to feel like you want to go crush the world, right? And that is kind of what starts to lead to that burnout, is you get that, you then feel like a failure. So how do you know that what you're doing is enough? And is that a question we can answer right now, or should we save that for a little bit later?
Yeah, the short answer is we have to unpack what's happening right now and maybe looking at the data, right? The data will let us know. Okay. And so, a perfect example of this is like you and I, we had run ads, Facebook ads for brand creator stuff 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and even before that. And we decided that we're going to put all of our time and energy into organic reach, basically audience building through YouTube, because that is where we found the best people. And it also was less stressful for us, and we saw more long-term benefits. So even though there's people that are doing Facebook ads and they're doing them well, I don't want the stress because of spending all of the money up front and then hoping to build a back end worth of stuff to recoup. And we're talking thousands of dollars. We're not talking like an Etsy ad that you spend $5 a day and you're hoping to get that money back. I'm talking like upwards of $500, $1,000 per day that you can spend on ads, and hopefully, and that's where you start to hear people say scale and all of that stuff. But I think it just comes down to unpacking where you are right now and what is moving the needle, and then looking at how do I do more of that? How can I create more things that point to that help to drive whatever is helping your business right now. Not necessarily what I said that you should do or what some other guru says that you should do. And I'm not saying I'm a guru, by the way. I'm just saying you're here, you're listening, you're applying some things. But if it does not, I think the check part here is really for you to say, okay, you took in that information and you go, is that something that's going to help me with where I'm trying to go? Is it going to help me in where I'm trying to go? Meaning, if you're listening to us and you're like, I'm all about building a brand in a niche with multiple products, in-demand products, all of those things, but then you hear someone else just randomly say, hey, did you know that these other things are selling? And the way that we're doing that is by posting 5 times per day on Etsy. And that's really now tricking the algorithm. And then you're like, I'm going to go do that. That takes your eye off of what you're supposed to be doing. So I think it's running whatever you're thinking of doing through that filter of like, does it help me to grow with what I'm currently doing and my current mission, right? And I think that's the big thing.
I think the other level to that filter before we dive in is, does it give me energy? Does it make me excited, or does it take away? And I think Facebook ads are a good example of that, right? You and I sat down, and I've run nearly $100 million in paid ads on different networks, right? Like, we know how to do this, but the question is it you and I sitting down and analyzing Facebook ads data, is that hour a better use of our time than getting on and hanging out with people? And it's not necessarily always the direct monetary compensation. It's, does this get us fired up more than the other thing, right? If I'm going to spend that hour, where is that hour better dedicated? Even if right now it's not necessarily the correct financial decision, if it's still going to move me towards that goal, and it keeps me excited to come on and talk to you guys for 2 hours every week or whatever, however long this live ends up being, then that's a potential other filter that we want to run all of these decisions through. And I think before we dive too far into that, I know we have a bunch of stuff that we want to dive into, but I think that is an important mental filter so that we don't do the here's a good word for you, Scott, self-flagellation, right? The self-guilt trip, the auto-castigation, right? For our Spanish speaking friends, any of those kinds of things where like, we don't have to feel guilty about doing less. And I know that's one of the things we're really going to hammer on today. So with all of that out of the way, with some of those filters out of the way, let's just dive in and start going through what this looks like, specifically inside of the Etsy ecosystem, and some of the things that people can do to avoid burnout and actually end up with a better business at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to jump into that. Here's what I want you guys to do though for me is, if you guys are getting value from this, if this is a good topic, and you feel like others will benefit from it, do us a favor and hit that like button. That's the way that you can help us and support the channel, and really reach more people, because I think more people need to hear this. All right. So that's number one. If you guys would do that for us, if you guys are getting value from this, do that, smash the like button. That would be amazing. The other thing is, if you're just starting, I saw a couple people in the comments say just starting. Thank you so much for doing this. To avoid this happening in the future, I also would recommend going and downloading our 100K roadmap. Because if you're on Etsy, there's going to be a lot of distractions of these hacks or tricks or, how to chase trends, all of those things. I would definitely say step one, if you want like a concise plan, is to download our 100K roadmap. Okay. If you want that, just in the comments, just put 100K. Again, just put 100K and we'll make sure that we get you a copy of that. It's going to give you a roadmap to follow, and then you won't be distracted. So that's the goal there. Okay. All right. So with that all being said, I'm going to pull up my notes real quick. Okay. The very first thing is we need to set real expectations. Okay. Right now, what is your expectation? And if you guys want to do that in the comments, tell us, what is your expectations? What do you feel like you should accomplish in the next 12 months? Okay. In the next 12 months, what is it that, actually, let's do this. What do you think that you should be achieving in the next 6 months? Because we're going to be approaching Q4 here pretty soon. Okay. Pretty soon. And I know it seems like, Scott, what are you talking about? Q4? We just got into July. Exactly. And right now we should be starting to think about Q4, which we're going to be talking a bunch more here on the YouTube channel in the coming weeks. So if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do so. Okay. Because that way there you can play along with us for Q4. It's a big one. Okay. Now, expectations. That's a big one. Some people are trying to chase something that is just way far down the road when you have to get to a certain milestone before you can even think about that other milestone. So to me, you also might be putting this added stress on yourself with not having a real expectation. And a perfect example is, and we had someone, and they might even be on today, but we had someone recently said, I want to do $1 million. Okay. And that's everybody. Like, I want to do $1 million. Like, great. Okay. But we haven't hit $100,000. We haven't hit $50,000. So to me, what is the expectation? And from there, can we pencil that in? Right? I'm a big fan of sitting down and writing out your plan and your short-term goal and long-term. But the short-term, let's say 6 months, because 6 months takes us to the next, the new year. Okay. Because what are we in July right now? Let's see, July, August, September, October, November. Yeah. Right about January. Right. So we're right about there. So that would be a good place to start. And what are your expectations? Where do you want to be sitting January 1st of 2025? Where do you want to be sitting? What are the expectations? And then you can kind of look at it and go, are these obtainable? Are these real? Are these too high? Am I shooting? And then this way here, you can kind of take the pressure off but it also will allow you to say, okay, and we've done other episodes on this where you can then find your target, know what you're shooting for, and then you can reverse engineer how to get there. And like I said, I believe it was either the last live or the one before that. We'll go ahead and make sure that we link that stuff up in the description. But really, really important with expectations. So that's the very first thing, is having realistic expectations. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, and Scott, I know we've talked about this in the past when it comes to setting goals or expectations.
Yeah.
But I like to use you've heard me talk about this, and depending on who you ask, there's two slight variations of this. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the same thing. When we're setting our expectations, when we're setting our goals, they need to be SMART, right? It's a nice little acronym for specific, measurable, actionable, or achievable, depending on who you ask. Realistic or relevant, right? That's where it is, where that little change is. And then time bound. So it needs to be something specific. By X time, I want Y results. So you were using this in the context of over the next year, I want to, right? And I saw somebody in the chat say, I'd be happy with $20,000 in profit over the next 6 months. That pays for my time. That's a great specific and measurable goal. Now, is it actionable? No, we probably have to break that down and say, I need to make X sales to achieve that, right? To make it a little bit more actionable, but that's fine. What really comes down to this is it relevant and realistic, right? Like, is this something that you can actually achieve? And this is where most people fail in their goals, because they say, I want to make $100,000 next year. Awesome. You have 365 days to do that. If you do the math and you look at your niche and the sales aren't there to support it, you're probably not going to hit that goal no matter how many designs you launch, right? And so knowing whether or not your goal is realistic, especially in the Etsy ecosystem, really comes back to looking at the niche and understanding if the niche we've chosen, the products we've chosen, are able to support that. And I think that's the most important thing when we're talking about setting real expectations, is that people miss how real it needs to be. It needs to be something that is achievable. If I want to say, I want to get $1 million in profit by tomorrow, is that specific? Yes. Is it measurable? Yes, because I either have an extra $1 million tomorrow or I don't. But is it achievable or realistic? Probably not, unless I have a giant email list and a bunch of stuff to sell people, right? There is a world in which that could happen for someone. For me, for Scott, for anybody in this chat, the chances of that happening are very slim. So we would need to walk that back, right? And figure out what a realistic or an achievable version of that goal looks like. And I think people like to set their expectations really high. Yeah. And there's that famous saying, if you shoot for the stars, you land somewhere among the clouds, even if you never get there, right? Or any of the million variations of that. Yeah. Cool. But also you have to have a rocket to begin with. And so we have to right? Like, we're not going to jump to the stars. And unless you're some sort of Olympic athlete, you're probably not even going to jump to the cloud level. So we need to figure out how to get there. And that's where it comes down to being realistic or achievable. And if you look at any goals that you set, any expectations that you set through that framework, you'll start to learn very, very quickly what is realistic and what isn't. And because they're specific and measurable, you can take a step back and make sure that what the expectation you're setting is realistic. And if we start with that as the foundation, it's a lot easier to avoid burnout, because we don't feel like, because we only sold $1,000 this month, that we're an absolute failure on our goal to get to $1 million in the next 6 months, because we knew that that wasn't going to happen to begin with, right? So we have to look at what is available to us from where we are right now before we set that destination. If we can do that, it's a huge first step in starting to avoid that burnout.
Yeah, it's big. And it comes down to, once again, like I said, you making it real in your own mind. I mean, we've all heard vision boards and, writing down, your goals and seeing them. Like, you can say it's woo-woo, whatever, but it does allow you to see it and to also feel like it's real and it's something that I am shooting for. So I'm a big fan of writing down on pen and paper. And it's a really cool thing to be able to go through and look at a year, 2 years, 5 years from now and go, where was I then? Where am I now? And you'll see how much you've grown. So I'm a big fan of doing that. But yeah, expectations is a big one. The next one, and this one here, we could go on. We could probably rant on this if I allowed Chris to, and I'm not saying like I'm a dictator of Chris, but I have to pull him back on this because he will want to rant on this, as I would too, but I'm not going to. And this one here is chasing trends, or what we like to call playing the Etsy lottery ticket. And what I mean is your entire goal or your entire strategy is to just find products that are trends and just launch those and just keep launching those and try to be the first out there. So this way here, you're going to be the one that's going to be leading the pack and everyone else is going to be trying to catch up. But then when everyone catches up and then they go ahead and they take you down, now all of a sudden, guess what you got to do? Go find that next trend. And you got to go ahead and jump on, that product that's selling really well or that design that's selling really well. And then you're like, okay, what's next? I got to find the next one. Talk about burnout. That's your business model. For you to have to sit there and constantly be finding the next hot product, the next niche product that's going to potentially make you your $1 million. Chris, I'm gonna unleash you right now, and I know you want to get in on this conversation. So I'm gonna tag team you right now. I'm gonna tag you in the ring. What's your thoughts on this whole mindset of like, and the gurus out there that are saying like, yeah, go ahead, just launch multiple products, multiple niches, and just find those trends and just get out there first.
I feel like I need the Hulk Hogan wig. I took this down, Scott. Now I need like a set of wigs so I can just throw them on for you and say, all right, brother. It's one of those things. Like, okay, I just went on a 5-minute rant, Scott, about setting SMART goals. Guessing wildly does not fall anywhere in that SMART structure, right? Just going, let's just shotgun this. Let's just throw as many things at the wall as humanly possible. That is not smart by any stretch of the imagination. And if we technically, right, maybe launching 1,000 products could be worked into the SMART goal framework, but it's a terrible idea. Why? Because it's not realistic to do in any amount of time. Let's just take, Scott, that year-long calendar, 365 days. Right? And a quarter, depending on who you ask. That's like, what, 2.5 products a day, 3 products a day that we need to design, create, launch, SEO, run paid ads to. That is literally a recipe for burnout. And if we're thinking about this from the trend chasing approach, we're pinning that entire goal on dancing avocado mugs instead of something we control. Setting those real expectations, especially if you're doing something like using the SMART framework, allows you to control your own destiny. That is the exact opposite of what we just talked about as something you should be doing if you want to avoid burnout. If you're leaving it up to chance, meaning I have to not only launch a ton of different things, but I have to be the first or second one to market. I have to hope that the trend lasts throughout the entire course of the year. I have to hope that no one can outrank me. Versus starting from a solid foundation and knowing that you're going to be able to get 3, 5, 20 sales a day in your niche from some of the cornerstone products, which I know is something that we'll talk about at some point, right? Having that foundation and being able to bolt things onto that, that's a good plan. Guessing wildly or hoping is not a plan. That's why it's called hoping and not planning.
Yeah. I love it. We got a lot of people in the comments saying, no, don't hold Chris back. We love when Chris rants. Chris unleashed. I love it.
Yeah, she trademarked it though, so I think we're in trouble with that one. The only reason Scott will hold me back, and Scott, I know you're very abusive to me on live streams, according to some of the YouTube comments.
I am.
Right? Like we're basically like brothers from another mother, so it's fine. But sometimes we have to do things because we have like hard deadlines, right? So if Scott's ever like, I can't let Chris just go off on this one, it's because he doesn't know how long I'm going to rant on something. And we do have some other things that we have to do throughout the day.
Just a couple.
Because we do have, Scott, SMART goals.
That's right. Yeah, no, exactly. If we had an hour, if we had an hour more, let's put it that way, we're going to have an hour, but if we had an hour more and we just wanted to unleash Chris, we could totally do that. And we may do that. So anyway, yeah, but Chris, you bring up some really, really good points, and you and I are always aligned on that. And that's why we're a big advocate of finding your cornerstone product. So that actually leads very well into the next point that I want to bring up if you want to avoid the dreaded Etsy burnout. And that is less is more mindset. Let me say that again. Less is more. And you need to adopt that mindset. And here's what I mean. If we are talking about Etsy, which we are, it's not necessarily about how many products you can launch, although you've probably heard that it is. And I'm curious, in the comments, have you heard that? Has anyone else heard that you should be launching a lot of products? And some would say 1 a day, 2 a day, 5 a day. What is the number that you heard? I'm just curious. I've heard it. I've heard it before. Okay. So I'm just curious. Let me know that in the comments. But here's what I mean by less is more. If you focus on the right things, okay, and then you're going to ask, well, Scott, what are the right things? I'm going to get to that. But what are the right things to focus on? The number one thing that I believe anyone in business should be focusing on, the number one thing, because nothing else is going to matter if you don't focus on this one thing, and that is finding your 3 to 5 or more, maybe 10. And those are your in-demand products. Those are the ones that will be driving sales in your business, the most sales in your business. And not even necessarily where I'm looking at this as sales, I'm looking at it as traffic. Because if we get the traffic in and you have some other products in there in your shop that are not in demand, meaning, and I say in demand, we've done other videos on this and we'll link everything up in the show notes. But if you're looking at these products as traffic coming in, not necessarily maybe your most profit, but the traffic coming in, if we focus on those and we find those, and now we drive people in, guess what? We might have 250 other products in our shop that aren't necessarily in demand, but the people that we're bringing in the shop are interested in those types of products. And that's the big difference from our method to everyone else's method. And I really have not heard of many other people talking about building a cohesive brand. It's always find the trending shirt or the design and put it on a Tumblr and put it like, that's all I ever hear. And so what I'm saying is, think about this, if you were adopting that strategy of you want to launch one product a day, okay, and you're going to do that now consistently, you're going to start feeling the overwhelm. You're going to start feeling the burnout, right? Because what does it take to create a design? You got that. Well, let's back up. You get research, then you have designing, right? Then from there, you have creating the product. Then from there, you have putting the product up on a listing. Then from there, you have optimization. Then from there, you're probably going to run some ads, right? So you have all of that stuff on one product. Wouldn't you rather focus your time and effort on those products that you know are getting sales consistently and has a bigger piece of the pie out there that you can get because there's so much demand for it? All right. Now, again, demand is going to be different for everyone, depending on your goals, your targets. If your target is $1,000 per month, it's going to be different than someone trying to make $10,000 per month. Totally different. We've covered that in other videos on the channel. So again, make sure you subscribe, make sure that you go through our playlists, and you'll probably find it there for either traffic or sales or any of that stuff. It's all there. But what I'm trying to say is, if you spend the time on finding these types of products, you don't have to work as hard because those products are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And then what you're going to do, you're not going to be sitting here and trying to find the best SEO to game the system or to try to beat your competition. No, you're going to have products that you know are getting searched for, you know that they're getting sales. And now all you need to do is put your energy there. And then over time, you start to build that up. And yes, it's going to be building an email list. To me, that's another thing that I'd be focusing on as one of my main pillars. It wouldn't be posting on Instagram 3 times a day and then TikTok, right? It just wouldn't be. But that's what we're being told. Or Pinterest, for that matter. Pinterest is actually probably, out of all the social medias, that's probably the best one that I would say, if you were spending time, that one there has a better, I guess, a better chance of working. But is it still worth you putting time there versus over here? Probably not yet anyway, right? So this is where you have to analyze where you are, what you're spending time on. But to me, the less is more mentality is so relieving. Like, you can just sit here and just feel the stress kind of fall off of you. You're like, wait a minute, what, Scott? I don't have to post all, new products all the time. No, you don't. You just have to find the right products and then work on driving awareness to those through email marketing, through your Etsy ads, through follow up, through the internal triggers inside of Etsy, running sales. Like those are the things you should be focusing on, not necessarily all of the other stuff that you're being told that you have to do. And one of the big ones is like launching so many products and having 1,000+ products, in there in the next 2 months. Like it's unnecessary. And it's a lot of stress that's put on you because that's what you're being told. Chris, I know you're going to have some thoughts on the old less equals more mentality.
Well, so first, somebody gave me a heart attack because they said, Scott, they know of an account, and I think they said it was like 55,000 products, 55,000 listings that has 26 sales, right? So after I picked myself up off the floor, I said, okay, so I gotta ask Scott, and I guess I have to ask the chat because I don't think you're necessarily gonna know. So the throwing spaghetti at the wall approach, launching a product a day or 3 products a day. What part of the product creation process that you and I talk about is being skipped here that somehow makes that faster or a better use of your time than taking the time to launch a product that's already selling? Because everybody I've ever seen talk about that myth still says you need to do at least a little bit of product research. You need to use Everbee or another sales evaluation tool to understand that product is selling before you create that design. So like, what am I missing here that somehow makes that a more efficient use of your time, energy, and effort to just sit down and grind and create and call the design muse 3 to 5 times a day until you get to 1,000 products? Scott, what am I missing here that somehow that approach makes any sense rather than spending an extra 5 minutes looking during the product research phase to see if anybody actually cares about it? Are you aware of something really obvious that I'm missing here? Like, are they just not doing product research and saying launch anything? Because from where I sit, like if you're doing that part of the process, and you spend an extra 2 minutes on that, you can save yourself an hour of design time, not to mention creating the listing and paying the 20 cents and doing all of those. What am I missing?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're missing anything. What I would say is whoever is doing that, like 55,000 products, for me, they're probably, and I don't know, but they're probably using some type of automation. They're probably doing some type of scraping. And that's a thing out there, by the way, guys. Like there's, shops that are being run.
Meme guy.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, they're scraping and then they're having a tool create products and then just slap them up there. Did it work for them? No. Why didn't it? Because the products are probably crap. Designs are probably crap. Listings are probably crap. So the whole idea of like, well, if it's up there, someone's going to buy it. No, it's still crap. Right. So what we need to do is we need to spend more of the time. What part did you
saying Kevin Costner lied to me? Are you telling me that if I build it, they won't come? No, but it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to come, right? And somebody in the comments said, oh, they're using AI. And I knew that this was going to come up.
Yep.
Have you ever created a listing description with AI? I love AI, right? I play with AI all day long. I spend entirely too much time using AI to, like people say it's more productive. It's probably less productive for me because I like to play with different things. Scott knows this. Somebody will talk about a new AI tool. I'll go play with it and I'll create a song about brand creators just to screw with them for the day, right? But that doesn't mean you don't still have to do the things. You still need to look at the output that you're getting from that. And yes, maybe you don't have to sit down and do the one portion of the process that you absolutely hate, other than spell checking and making sure that the details are correct and some of those kinds of things. But you still have to create the listing. And guess what? Once you've created a t-shirt listing, that product description ain't really going to change all that much. So going to ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini doesn't really save you that much time once you've created it once. And if you've created it once the right way, right, with all of the SEO tenets that we've talked about in mind, then it only saves you like a couple minutes here or there. And scaling that still doesn't make any sense to me. Rather than creating 100 listings, and let's just say, Scott, the product description portion of this using ChatGPT takes us 5 minutes. So we're going to launch 100 listings that are never going to sell,
right?
Because we're not spending that extra time. Well, that's, I don't know, 500 minutes. I'm not a math genius, but that seems like a few hours worth of time, right? We could, instead of spending those 500 minutes on creating listings that are never going to sell, spend an extra, I don't know, 100 minutes. Let's go crazy here, Scott. Let's go 120 minutes. Let's go 2 hours on the product research side of stuff. We've now saved, what is that, 20% of the entire amount of time that we would have spent and we can create designs we know are going to sell, right? Even if we weren't using the niche-based approach, that seems like it makes a lot more sense to me. So somebody in the comments, whether you're on with us live or you're watching the replay of this, let me know what I'm missing and why that approach is advocated at all, other than by the people, Scott, like our good friend, the meme guy, who said, just go scrape all the memes on Reddit. Somebody's guaranteed to buy it, right? Which runs you into a whole bunch of trademark issues. But somebody let me know what I'm missing here in terms of, instead of spending just a little bit of extra time on the product creation side, launching as many things as possible to try to get a little bit of traffic. It seems like just an utter waste of time to me. And I gotta be missing something here, Scott, because it's such a popular myth that it feels like somebody's got to have an answer. And I'm curious what they are.
Yeah, no, I don't think there are. I think it's just, again, it's the lottery ticket approach, right? It's like, if I have a whole bunch more scratch offs, I'm eventually going to win. And I believe that people are, again, let me just say it. I think a lot of people are lazy. And I think because of that, no offense, like, if you're watching this, probably not you, because you're here, right? But I am saying, and I think we would agree, there's a lot of lazy people out there that just want the easy, quick, and they're thinking to themselves, I'm just going to buy that lottery ticket. I'm not going to do the work. I'm going to buy the lottery ticket and I am going to win. How many people have won the lottery that actually still have the money from the lottery? Probably not many. Okay. The people that earned the money, I'm not saying they all do, but I bet you they think a little bit harder when they're spending that money, and they also know how to make money now. Right. So
I think my mom would probably be the only person. And Scott, I think you know this story. You remember when slot machines actually gave coins back?
Oh yeah.
Right now it's like a ticket.
Yeah.
My parents went to Vegas when I was like 10 or 11, and they set a budget of like $100. My mom hit on one of the slot machines and counted out $100 in quarters, and then they gambled the rest of what they had, right? So they're still laughing at my mom in Las Vegas. But Sweden pointed out something interesting here, Scott. So even if we aren't missing anything, right, and it's somehow more effective to do that, which it can't possibly be. If we look at that account that had 55,000 listings, that's $11,000 in listing fees, right? So we're spending a lot of money, even if we're saving on the time side.
Yeah,
we're spending a lot of money that could be much better spent in our business. And I don't know about you, Scott, but I'd much rather spend that $11,000. Let's call it $10,000, because we're still going to launch a bunch of products, right? I'd rather spend that $10,000 possibility on something like, I don't know, Etsy ads, where we're going to get a 3, 4, or 5 or more return on that investment, right? Turn that $10,000 into $50,000 coming into the business by spending 5 more minutes on the product research side and not worrying about having to launch as many products as possible. This is not a numbers game in terms of the number of lines we have in the water. It's a numbers game in terms of how many lines we have in the water that have bait and hooks on them, something somebody will actually buy. And I know you guys hate it when we go down the bass fishing route, right? But that is the approach that we're going with here, right? Like, we can't just throw clear line in the water that doesn't do anything. You're never going to catch a fish, right? It has to have a hook, it has to have bait, and there have to be fish around. If there's not, you can throw as many of those in the water as you want, and it's never going to turn into anything. Spend the extra 10 minutes, and you're going to have a lot less burnout. And you actually have the possibility, Scott, of that turning into a sale.
You have a better chance of it turning into a sale. And also, what we've talked about, you also have, which again, this will eliminate burnout. This will, avoid you feeling like you have to keep building things, because all you're doing now, if you're doing this approach, or not, throwing spaghetti at the wall approach, but the approach of finding those key cornerstone products that drive people in, of the right people, you're now going to have to work less. And I don't mean lazy. I'm just saying you can focus on the things that matter. In this case, it's building a brand that has what? Customers. And those customers do what? Buy more things of what? Similar stuff to what they had purchased in the past. If someone purchased something that was about cats, and then I sell something in the future about cats, they're probably going to be interested in that. So that's the whole thing that I want you to be aware of, is like, a lot of times going down the road of like, oh, we've got more of a chance to go into all these multiple niches. You might think so, but you actually add more complexity and more stress, and you're not building a customer base, which could also make your business thrive, and you have less stress because you have a customer base that can buy stuff. And as you build that momentum, guess what's going to happen? When you want to sell your brand new product that you just released, you're going to have a great chance of getting that thing ranked faster than your competition. Because why? You have a customer base. So again, we've talked about that before. We're going to keep talking about that because it's so important. You're going to hear us kind of keep pounding that into the ground because it's so important. It's so important. So let's move on. Got a couple more points here I want to make. And this one here is real simple. Well, I say it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And that is avoiding distractions. That's a big one. Because why? Because you're scrolling YouTube, you're scrolling Instagram, you're scrolling TikTok, right? You're doing all of the stuff that we all do, right? And then something grabs your attention and you're like, wow, this person said that they make $35,000 a month and they only work 20 minutes a day. Actually, we did a video on that recently of someone that was posted on someone's blog that said, I only work 20 minutes a day and I make $35,000 a month. Sure you do, right? And we call BS on that because it's not true. It's not real. You know, did you hit the lottery once? You might have had a season, maybe, right? But in reality, is that real? Probably not. But it caught your attention because why? Because it's sexy. Who wouldn't want to work 20 minutes a day and make $35,000 a month? Who wouldn't want that? So we're in a place right now in the world of like, we see this stuff. We know that this stuff, a lot of times your little BS meter goes, it's probably BS. But then you're like, but maybe it's not. I'm going to go I'm going to check that out. I'm going to look at it. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'll just try it. I'll just try launching one product, a day. Right. And then you start getting into where now you feel like you have to do it. And then you feel kind of bad because you're like, I just wasted all this time. I should have been doing this over here. And then you beat yourself up. Right. And then we get into the mental game of like putting ourselves down, and that doesn't bode well. So being very, very cautious on what you let in here. And there's things that you can do. One is you can unsubscribe from emails that you are subscribed to. Okay. And if that's us, if you're getting emails from us and you're like, Scott, you're kind of like annoying and you're kind of distracting me, then unsubscribe. Okay. If this channel is distracting you, unsubscribe. Like literally, like just, I'm giving you permission to do that because I don't want to be a distraction. And I think that that's how you have to like look at what you're letting into your world, letting into your mind is also making you feel a certain way. Is it making you feel good or is it making you feel stress? And so that's, to me, a good filter to run it through. And then you can feel kind of like the weight lifted off of you and you're like, cool. I don't have to be tempted because I'm not seeing that. Okay. So that would be one thing that I would probably say to do because you're going to eliminate any distractions and we don't want to be distracted. We want that plan and then we just want to execute the plan. And once again, I'll bring that up if you want the plan that we follow and the whole brand building side of things. We did put together our roadmap and it's the 100K roadmap for what we've done in the past. If you would like that, just put 100K in the comments and we'll make sure that we get you a copy. The other thing is we were talking earlier about like tools. That's another thing. People get distracted with tools. They're like, I'm going to get, I'm going to get this tool because they have better keyword research. And I'm going to just go and look at all the keywords that I can put in there because I might find that golden keyword. There's another tool. There's another tool. There's another tool. Only use the tools that are going to help get you to where you want to go. For me, Everbee. That's the only tool. That's the only tool that we are using right now for Etsy type research, things like that. Okay. Even our email. Okay. Now Canva, yeah, we're using that for design, but that's it. Everbee. Chris just put it up on the screen. If you would like to try it for free, or if you've used it before, but you went away from it and you want to go back to it, you can still go there, brandcreators.com/Everbee. You can try it for free. You get 10 free searches per month, or just buy the growth plan, even if you just do it for a month, because this here is going to allow you to find those products that we talked about and really what you should be focusing on. So again, brandcreators.com/Everbee. That is an affiliate link. You will buy us a cup of coffee. And as you can see, I like my coffee. So yeah, that would be awesome. All right. Let's move on. Chris, distractions is a big one. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the distraction thing, Chris?
I think we covered this a little bit earlier when we were talking about energy vampires, right? Like things that suck you away from what you need to be doing. And I think as someone with massive ADD, in case y'all haven't caught on yet, right? Like I have that squirrel brain, and it's very easy if you're not, Scott, setting the foundation here. And I know we pounded on real expectations, setting smart goals, but if you're just saying, I want to make $1 million this year, and you feel like you're not making any traction because you missed that part of the setup, it's even easier to get distracted because you're going to go, you know what I need to do? I saw that piece of advice about launching 1 million products, but instead of doing that right away, I'm going to go to YouTube and look for the dancing avocado mug video to see what's really hot right now, what that next $10,000 product is going to be, or the next $100,000 product is going to be. And you spend 4 hours watching YouTube videos about the 4 products you need to launch right now if you ever want to make a single dime on Etsy, instead of doing the thing that you should be doing, which is defining your niche and figuring out what products are actually selling to those people on a consistent basis, right? So if you're not setting that foundation, you start to slip into those other areas. And that's where the distractions, the time vampires, and all of those things start to become a lot easier to fall victim to. And if you are focused, right, you're putting those blinders on. You're saying, I know because I set a SMART goal that if I launch 5 products in the next 3 months or what, whatever that is, that are actually being purchased by my market, that I'm going to be on the right direction. It's a lot easier to ignore that YouTube video about dancing avocado mugs or whatever the next hot thing is going to be. You can always watch it when you're taking your bathroom break a little bit later, right? You don't have to watch that right now. Sit down. And I know we're going to get into creating your focused productivity schedule here in just a minute. If you can get those things done, then go watch all the distracting things you want, as long as you don't let it pull you away from the things you actually truly need to be doing.
Yeah. All right. So to wrap up this thing in a nice little bow, is obviously go back and listen to what we just said, right? The 5 different things, or the 4 different things. The 5th one here is coming. Okay. And then I'm going to have Chris do a little recap. But the thing that really helped me and still helps me to this day, even with everything that we're doing, right? Like helping my wife with her Etsy shop, although she's doing pretty much most of the work. We're going to get into Q4. That's when I will step up and help a little bit more. But I'm running brand creators over here. Started a channel with my son recently. Him and I are doing, some fun things there. So I'm busy, but how do I manage doing so much without feeling stressed, without feeling like I'm not doing enough, or, I'm not spending time with my family? I literally just got back from a trip to Idaho. My daughter lives there with her husband and her 2 kids, my grandkids. And I just went there and spent 5 days there. And I got everything done and ready. So I didn't have to do a thing when I was there. I didn't bring my laptop. All I had was my phone. And I spent probably only 30 minutes a day on my phone, maybe an hour, depending on what they were doing, if they were napping or whatever. My point is this: if you have a good schedule and you can either pre-plan or stay on track daily, it's going to allow you to feel like you got enough done. Okay. Because getting enough done is really what's making you think you have to do more. Okay. So how do you do this? I would write down, again, here we are back to the old notepad. I would write down what you need to accomplish. And I would also even look at it and say, okay, if you don't have your 3 to 5 products, you need to look and say, okay, I need my 3 to 5 products that I know is getting sales, I know is in demand, I know is getting traffic. If that's your main focus, then that's what we have to do. We have to now create a little sprint, a little time. So this way here, we can focus on that. So if you only have an hour a day, your hour a day is going to be focusing on that, right? Product research. So what I would do is I would write down, what is it that you should be focusing on? And then from there, how much time are you going to be allocating to this? And then what time of the day is it going to be? And then that's your block of time. I typically, for my stuff, I'm generally sitting down 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay. After I'm up and done a little bit of stretching and got my coffee ready and I've got myself together, 8 o'clock is my start time. I start at 8, I work for a solid 45 minutes, and then I take a 15-minute break. stretch the legs, go out by the pool, have a cup of coffee, whatever. Then I come back in, I do another 45. So I kind of break up my day. My morning is the bulk of my work. Okay. Wednesday, this is my recording day. This is the day that I come on, I do the live, but I'm also doing some of these other sub videos that we're going to be doing here shortly. And that becomes my recording day, but that's my biggest day of the week. Other than that, it's pretty much 3 to 4 hours in the morning. Afternoons are always left open. But now I used to in the afternoon be like, oh, I can do more. I can do more stuff. I can do more stuff. I can do more stuff. And it really wasn't amounting to any more growth. So sit down and really figure out what is going to be your schedule to get the stuff that you need to get done, and then be okay with walking away. Okay. And knowing that you're not distracted because we got rid of the distractions, right? And now we have a list of what we need to do. So this way here, we know what we're doing when we sit down, and we're not like scrolling around or, bouncing to different things that we could do, but what should we be doing? So you really want to just sit down and map out what does the next, I would do it in month increments. Like what's the next month look like? And then I would break it down per week and then break it down per day. And almost like looking at what is the little chunk that you're going to be working on. Like right now, it might be like, I want to get ready for Q4. So I'm going to start doing some research on the 3 to 5 products I'm going to be selling in Q4. I'm going to get those researched. And then from there, the next chunk of that would be designing them. So now you got to figure out the design time. We got to figure in the design, right? So all of that stuff is coming down to knowing what you should be focusing on, what you should be working on, and then creating the plan, the roadmap, or the schedule that you're going to allow yourself the time to do it. And then from there, you can feel good about it because you're focusing on the right things that are going to help grow your business. So Chris, what did I leave out on that? Anything?
So how much is enough, right? Like, how do you know you're doing enough? You said you try to do 3 to 4 hours a day, right? Over the last week. And I think you only needed a laptop, Scott, for one thing. And I was your laptop for that one thing. You said, hey, this weird thing happened. Can you take care? I don't even remember what it was, right? Because it was like 2 minutes worth of my time.
Yep.
But other than that, you were able to totally check out. How do you know how much is enough? What you're doing in that 3 to 4 hours is actually productive. And I know some of that comes back to the goals that you have, but you just talked about planning this in monthly increments. Are you at the end of the month saying I'm moving closer to that goal and that's how you know, or is there another method that you're using for that people are missing out on?
Well, I do think it has to do with like looking at the data. So I'm just going to use an example for us for using, YouTube. Like, so we're posting content here for you. Let's see here. We're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's live, Thursday, Friday, and then the weekends are off. All right. We're doing all that content. That content is being done consistently. And I can look now at the numbers, at the end of the month, and I can see how did we do? Did we underperform? Did we not? And then I'm going to look at some videos that did well. And I'm just using that as an example because that's something that's just kind of easy to understand. Same thing would be like if it was in your Etsy shop, you're going to look at, okay, what products did I launch? How did they perform? What kind of traffic did they get? And then if I'm running ads, I'm looking at the ads data. I'm like, okay, I spent $10 a day versus $5 a day. Let's look at my numbers. And I'm going to go, was that worth me going in and pruning the negative ones, the negative keywords? And did that help increase that? So there's things that I'm looking at as far as like data. Okay. But here's the most important part of this entire thing. Listen up. Okay. Lean in on this one. And that is consistency. So to me, it's just about being consistent. Like, I'm not looking at my numbers necessarily like every single day to say, am I working on the right things? I'm looking at it, yes, maybe a week at the end of the week, and I'm going to be checking in on the numbers. But I'm more or less saying like, here's the big one. Did I stay consistent on what I said I was going to stay consistent on? And this comes down to discipline. Right? We talked about this before. Motivation is great, right? But you got to be motivated. Discipline is totally different. You're committing to doing something and you're sticking to doing the thing. Working out, perfect example. Are you committing to work out 5 days a week, and are you doing it? If you're not, then your discipline is off. And we all do fall off the wagon, by the way. Doesn't mean we're perfect. But if you commit to something, so to me, it's all about the commitment, not necessarily I have to look at the numbers every single day, because I can guarantee you that if you are checking in, you're doing your product research, you're then going and you're creating products on a regular basis. After you've done the research, you're probably going to see more growth. And yes, you're going to be creating other products that might not have as much demand, but inside of your shop now, you might have a larger inventory of products that people can buy that are your ideal customer. And then that's going to start to ramp up. So I guess what I'm saying is staying consistent for me is a sign of growth, because now I can say, I've done this consistently. I know that I have a better chance of succeeding because I'm showing up consistently, working on the things that matter. So to me, it would be like, do a check in with yourself at the end of the week and go, okay, I committed to an hour a day for 5 days. Did I do it? Didn't I do it? Right? Okay, for an hour a day, you might have said, yeah, I was there. I was doing research, but were you doing research on the right thing? Were you researching keywords because someone said that you're supposed to find these keywords now, and that's going to make you magically rank, right? So it's almost like checking in with like what you committed to. So Chris, I don't know if that helped or if that made sense, but to me, it's about consistency.
Joe Evis just said commitment is greater than discipline. I would argue commitment is discipline, right? Yeah. If you are committed to doing something, you have to have the discipline to carry that out. But those two go hand in hand. And I would argue that the discipline in that case is either equal to or more important than the commitment itself, because you can commit to a lot of things, but if you don't have the discipline to carry it through, you're never going to get anywhere. And Scott, I think the thing that I'm looking for, and I know there's not a one size fits all for everybody, but I'm curious if you have a thought on what the maximum number of things that people should be trying to get done in terms of a commitment, right? So even if you were going to work an 8-hour day, you probably would still end up doing the same number of things on a daily basis. You would just stretch it out, right? What is it, Parkinson's law? Any task will expand to the time allotted to it, right? But so is it one thing, two things, three things? Does it vary wildly from business to business? Like, is there a way that we can give people a little bit of a framework to say, hey, if you're doing a few things every day, that you're going to start to see that, and you shouldn't feel like you have to do more than that. If you have the energy, the time, the desire to do more than that on a daily basis, go for it. But if you can get one thing done, is that enough to get you moving in the right direction? Like, is there a number, or does it just vary wildly?
Well, yeah, I think it does vary. And I would say if I was sitting down with someone and they were, again, trying to build their Etsy shop and their e-commerce business, it's going to be looking at, in the beginning, there's going to be more things that have to be done. Then after that, there's just like, I want to call it maintenance or just like everyday tasks. But one of them is going to be like product research. One is going to be probably optimization. One is like looking at your Etsy ads. So you might say like, okay, if I get one thing done every day, it isn't going to be the same thing every day. And that's kind of where you get that compound effect. Because if every week you check in, let's say that every other day you give yourself 30 minutes to look at your Etsy ads and to go in and turn off the bad ones, right? And then also learn from the ones that you might not have been aware of. If you do that twice a week, well, you're going to grow, okay? And every week it's going to be a little bit different because there's going to be new keywords that are being shown. Another one would be product research. If you did product research on Mondays and you did that every single Monday, that one thing, you're probably going to consistently now find better products and find a product you might not have found before. So to me, it's not necessarily like, oh, you have to have 3 things done a day or you're not going to succeed. It's like, no, be consistent, but also find out those buckets of growth that you're going to be working on. And if we're talking just Etsy, then I'd be looking at product research, optimization, whether that's listing optimization or whether that is your Etsy ads. And then I would be looking at follow-up. I think follow-up is another big one that you could do that every day. That could be one that automatically gets bolted on to your day every single day. Because if you reach out, I'm not just talking customer support, that's a given. I'm talking like reaching out to customers that left, or didn't leave you a review, and you reach out to them and you're like, hey, thanks so much for purchasing. I just want to make sure everything's cool. We're a small business and we would love to know how your experience was. If you could leave us a review, that'd be awesome. If you did that and you built that into your, whether it's once a day or once every other day, or maybe twice a week or whatever, you're probably going to get more reviews. What's that going to do? Eventually, it's going to build your reviews, which is going to allow you to have higher conversions. So that just builds on itself. So I would say mix it up for the entire week. That's going to focus on your buckets, but I would start with like at least one thing, two max, if you're part-time, which I think most people are part-time.
Yeah, and I think the bigger danger comes in the overcommitment rather than the undercommitment.
Totally.
Because you can always add more things in.
Totally.
Right? You say, at the end of this month, I sat down, I set my year-long goal to get to $30,000 or whatever it was. I think the example we were using is 20. And if I stay on this pace, I know it's going to pick up a little bit in Q4 and all that, but if I stay on this pace, I'm not going to get there. And it's still, looking at it, still specific, it's still measurable, it's still actionable, it's still realistic, it's still time bound. What do I need to do? I can add something in. But the recipe for burnout, Scott, I think comes from the other side of this, where you say, I need to do 10 things today. I must do 10 things tomorrow. And I think if you can break it down into one or two, maybe three things, you're going to notice that even on those days where you feel like not doing anything, which is a real thing, right? Like you're going to wake up some days and just hate everything that you're doing. But if you can still get through those one or two, maybe three things, then you're always going to see that progress. And I think it really does, Scott, come down to the discipline of just being able to conquer that barbarian on your back, right? The monkey telling you can just sit down and watch Netflix. Cool. You're committed to a half an hour of product research. Do that. And then go watch Netflix. If that's what you are craving to do, then go do that. But you've already done the things you committed to do. And if you commit to a few small things, you're going to see that progress. You can always pile some more stuff on there if you see that you're not moving fast enough. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to pull back, to say, oh my God, I'm doing these 20 things on a daily basis. If I stop doing one of these, my business is going to go up in flames. Probably not, but it feels like that. And that is the recipe for burnout. If you can commit to a few small things that will move your business forward, and you will find those by setting that foundation, setting those goals at the very beginning. What do you need to do to get to $100,000 this year? Well, when we take a look at the market, we do the research, we know how many sales we're going to need. We know what our profit margins need to be. And then we can say, all right, I've launched all of the products that I need to launch. They're going to get me there. Now my daily tasks are just customer service follow-up, maybe checking in on Etsy ads a few times throughout the week, whatever it is. It makes your life a lot easier. And if you can get those few small things done, you have enough momentum that you feel like you did something today. And if you need to spend the rest of the day recharging, watching Netflix, hanging out in the hot tub, doing whatever it is that you need to do, you just don't have any motivation, you still know that you're headed in the right direction.
All right. So Chris, let's do this, because I know some people are they're going to watch the beginning of this. They're going to want to watch the entire thing, but it's been over an hour and 15 minutes. Let's give them a quick little recap, and let's kind of set this up. So if someone wanted to watch just this section, they can help themselves with the burnout. So let me tee it up for you here real quick. So if you're feeling burnout on Etsy and you're wondering how the heck do you manage it, I'm going to ask Chris Schaefer. Chris, what are some things that you can do if you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling burnout, and what are some things that you can do to help not feel that and also grow your business?
Yeah. It comes down, Scott, it comes down to just a few main things. And the very first thing that you need to do is set realistic expectations. The number one thing you will find that will lead you to burnout is having unrealistic expectations. I hate to break it to you. It does not matter how many dancing avocado mugs you think you're going to sell. You're not going to make $1 million between now and Friday. Right? We need to set realistic expectations. The best way I've found to do that, you can use whatever tool works for you, but the best way that I found to do that is using that SMART goal framework. So every goal that we set is specific, it's measurable, it's actionable, it's realistic, right? And that's that $1 million by tomorrow, probably not realistic, and it's time bound. So we say, we're going to make X money in Y time, and we have a reason to think that we can get to that place. If we have a realistic foundation, that makes a lot of this process a lot easier. in the Etsy ecosystem, Scott, the next thing I see that leads to Etsy burnout the most is chasing trends or buying product lottery tickets, right? Going and watching all the YouTube videos about how this mug will make you $100,000 and trying to launch as many products as possible, trying to get as many unbaited hooks just floating out in the water, hoping that the fish will come bite them as possible, because eventually one of those will turn into traffic, and that traffic will turn into sales. Rather than doing that, we should be doing tip number 3 here, which is the less is more mindset. Rather than trying to launch as many products as possible, we need to be picking products people are looking for. If we can focus that time, energy, and effort, that product creation energy around products that we know are going to sell, it makes our life a heck of a lot easier. We have to do a little bit more on the product research side and a little bit less on the design side, because we already know what's going to sell. We're going to have fewer listings, which means we can save that extra money and use that for something like Etsy ads, which will drive us even more traffic. And I think that less is more mindset is something that is huge in helping people avoid burnout. If you're doing those things, Scott, there are 2 more that I think are important for people who are trying to avoid burnout, especially in the Etsy ecosystem. The next one would be putting your blinders on, avoiding distractions. You've already set that goal. You know what your goal is. You're creating the products. You're doing the things that you need to do. Do not get distracted. It's very easy, especially if you're as ADD as I am, to say, hey, let me go watch this one video about this one weird new trick that's going to revolutionize my Etsy business. Rather than doing that, focus on the fundamentals. Get those blinders on until you've reached your goal, at least for today, and then go watch that video, right? There's nothing wrong with watching it, but don't let that change your entire business model. Don't let that derail your day. Focus on the things you need to be doing. And that takes us to tip number 5, Scott, which is creating your focused work schedule. If you can commit to doing a handful of things that will move your business forward on a daily basis, you are going to avoid burnout, and you're going to see the results on your way to the goal that you committed to. If you try to do everything all of the time, that one day next week that you wake up and you go, I just don't want to do anything today, you're not going to do anything. And then you're going to end up in this flywheel of guilt and self-doubt, and you're going to start to burn yourself out. Rather than saying, I need to launch 10 new products today, I need to product research 1,000 products, I need to pick 15 new niches for my business. Bad advice, generally speaking, but whatever that is, instead of committing to doing 100 things or 50 things or 20 things, commit to 1, 2, or maybe 3 things that you're going to do that will move your business forward. That might look like, all I need to do today is look at my Etsy ads data. And if I do that, I can feel like I was productive today. That can be enough to get you headed in the right direction. People try to do too much, and that is what leads to burnout.
Sweet. Nailed it. Yeah, that's really good. And again, I think the reason why I wanted to do this, guys, is because it's a real thing. Like, people are feeling burnout. I've felt it. Chris has felt it. We've all felt it. And it's about us then taking a step back and then looking at what we're doing, and then really looking at the things that really, truly matter. And to me, if we can do that, it can slow things down a little bit, but also allow us to have concentrated focus time. And I think it's a big, big deal. So thanks for doing that, Chris. Nice little recap. Now what we're going to do here, do we have any questions before we move on to our next bit of business that we wanted to talk about?
So we had a question from Steffa who said, if you focus on the right thing, then what? You keep focusing on the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? How are you going to know you're focused on the right thing? You start moving incrementally and slowly towards your goal. Maybe you move faster than you thought you were going to, but you're going to start to see progress. If you're not seeing progress, chances are you're not focused on the right thing. Bailey said, I haven't been burnt out since I switched from the general store model to building a brand based on a niche. Thank you, guys. Way less listing, no more headaches. No more headless chicken, and sales keep going up.
Love it. Love it.
She also had a question. She said, does anybody know how this happened? I have gift messages turned off, but I got an order today with a gift message on it. I can do it, but I don't want that option on future orders. Double check that it's still turned off and that Etsy didn't turn it back on. The other thing that may be is that it's actually just one of the gift mode previews, and they marked that as having a gift message so that you were aware of that. Just double check how that actually came through in the system. And Scott, we had a win from Rachel's Bridal Accessories. She said, I learned so much from you guys. I'm starting to make some money using Etsy ads and discounts. So I love to hear that. Wanted to give her a quick shout out before we dive into the next topic.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. So the other thing is too, guys, we are going to be doing a live, really focusing on answering questions, we had a post that we put up in the Facebook group, which if you guys are not part of the Facebook group and you would like to be part of the Facebook group, you can go to brandcreators.com/group. And from there, you can join us over there. It's a place for some of our audience to go and continue the conversation. We're not necessarily in there answering questions every day just because we don't have that kind of time, although it's great for people to connect. But we had a post that we put up that we were going to do, and we had this post maybe a month and a half ago, and a bunch of questions came in. We never ended up doing the live. We're going to do the live here coming up. We just haven't set a date yet. We might do it on a Friday. We might do it on a Wednesday. We're not quite sure. Yeah, but if you have any questions that you would like us to answer in depth on a Q&A session, then drop them in the comments. We can answer some here today. We do have a couple more things that we want to address. And then from there, again, we can dedicate a whole session on just Q&A. All right. So with that being said, Chris, I'm going to see what's next up for us. Oh, okay. This one actually is related because once again, we're hearing people all the time struggle, not just with burnout, but with what to focus on. All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of a rant on this one myself. I'm giving myself permission on this one. If there was one thing to focus on Etsy that would be the biggest return on your time, probably the biggest return on growth for your business, I'm going to give you that right now. And that is focus on products first. Let me explain. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Actually, it's not hard, but there is more to it. Here's the deal. A lot of times we are focusing on things like keyword research, listing optimization, Etsy ads, customer follow-up, all of those things, right? Now, customer follow-up, we got to get sales in order to have customer follow-up. So that really doesn't happen unless we're getting the sales. But let's just talk about all of those other things. SEO, super important. Search engine optimization for those of you that are new. Okay, that means that if someone types in your keyword, they're going to find your listing or potentially find your listing. But if we do not have products that are being searched for, then SEO doesn't mean anything. It doesn't work because there's no search. So whenever I hear someone saying, oh, I'm going to launch this product because I think it's great, or one person asked me for it, so I created it and I put it up. Sure, you could get lucky and put it up there and someone could buy it. Absolutely could happen. And I know people that have done it. But what we want to do is if we had one thing, if there was only one thing that I would tell you is the most important to focus on, it's finding products that are in demand for your niche. Now, for those of you that are just throwing spaghetti at the wall and basically launching any products and having like a general store, I would advise you to narrow down into a niche, or at least a niche that could have some sub niches that's bolted together. So this way here, when you do all of this work to find the products, design the products, list the products, do SEO, run your Etsy ads, customer follow-up, all that stuff, you're doing all that to make it worth your while, focusing on a niche. Now we can do something else, and that's build that customer base. Okay. And we've talked about that a lot on this channel. But the number one thing is finding those products. And you're like, well, Scott, that's obvious. I get it. But here's the mistake. Like I said, a lot of people are making. They're not doing product research, or they're doing product research. At least they think they are. And they're doing it where they're looking at the keyword search and not necessarily the sales search. That's a big mistake that I see a lot of people making. Number one, you're going to need to use some type of tool in order to see the data. The tool that we recommend, it's the one that we use, and yes, we're an affiliate for it. So yes, you will buy us a cup of coffee if you go through it, is Everbee. And if you want to try it for free, little shameless plug, you can go to brandcreators.com/Everbee. And you're going to use that tool to find products that are in your niche that are in demand, meaning they're selling. if you're just looking at the keywords, that to me can be misleading. So what I want to do is I want to find products, and my rule of thumb is generally if you're just starting, 3 to 5 products is where I would start with finding the in-demand products. Because if we find these products, okay, that are in demand, they're proven to sell, all the work that we're doing, SEO, listing optimization, Etsy ads, we're focusing on driving awareness to products that we know are being searched for and we know are being purchased. Instead of the other thing, we're focusing on SEO on a product that's not getting any searches and it's not getting any sales, or it's getting very little sales. So if there was one thing that I would say is the most important thing to focus on, it is finding those in-demand products that's going to drive the traffic into your shop. And if you're following the niche approach that we talk about, or building a brand approach in a niche, then we're going to lead people into our shop that also we have products over here that might not be in demand. We can launch those other products that are related to our niche, even if they're not getting a lot of search, because now we've introduced these products to people coming through the front door by finding the products that have the demand. Hopefully that makes sense. Let that sink in for a second. Finding those products, 3 to 5 to start with, that are bringing in the people, the traffic, okay? Even if you're not making as much money with those there are going to be the ones that are going to lead people into the shop. They enter the shop and now they have more items that are related to that niche because you're building a niche-based brand. And now from there, they're going to be introduced to these products. Very similar to if you had a brick and mortar and someone was looking for a new fishing pole and they went into your shop and you sell all kinds of fishing stuff. Well, they walk in for the pole and they walk out with the tackle box, the new lures, maybe the waders, the boots. They walk out with that other stuff that might not have been the initial search, but it's there because we know that that's what our customer might also want. But we led them in with the products that we know are getting searched for inside of Etsy. That is the one thing that you should be focusing on if you want to grow your Etsy shop. So Chris, is there anything I left out of that little rant?
I think that one is killer, Scott. And I know we've been talking a little bit today about not getting distracted by YouTube videos. I think that is one that's worth being distracted by, because it's not about doing more. It's about doing less and getting better results, which is what the whole point of this live stream today was all about, right? How can we focus on fewer things, be less distracted, and get better results? It's a great place to start.
Yeah, I love that. All right, cool. Let's move on. This one here is, we're going to actually do a little reaction video that we have not watched fully, but we did see that it was posted. And it's a video of a woman that her Etsy shop was closed. And well, why she actually closed her shop. I'm sorry. I think she was suspended, and then I think she decided to just close her shop. So we're going to actually pull up that video, and you might have already watched this. I don't know. Let us know in the comments, but I think we can always learn from hearing someone else's experience. And so we decided to do that here today. So I'm going to pull up my screen, and I am going to go ahead and pull this up. Chris, can you see that?
I can.
All right. So let's go ahead and do this. Let me go ahead and tee it up too real quick, Chris. If you can put me full and then pull me back out again. So there's been a lot of Etsy sellers that have either been getting suspended or being banned, but there's a lot of sellers that are getting very upset. And in this case, I want to share with you how someone decided to close their Etsy shop after 3 years and hundreds of sales. Chris, I want to go ahead and watch this with you. I want to see your reaction as well. And I want to see what we can learn from this woman's experience. It's a 9-minute video. We'll probably skip through it a little bit, but I definitely wanted to see exactly what happened here, why she's closing, and why she decided to kind of leave the platform. So let's go ahead and listen in.
I closed down my Etsy store last week after 3 years and 166 sales, and I want to talk about why. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Adriana. I've been running my handmade jewelry business for the last 3 years, and I started my business simultaneously on Etsy and Shopify.
Okay, so she's got a Shopify and an Etsy shop. So that's going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see how she did with Shopify. I'm going to assume she still has Shopify and she left Etsy. Well, let's see. It's pretty interesting too. This is like for handmade jewelry, 166 sales. And again, I just want people to realize like this is not a print on demand, but it's definitely products that are selling. So a seller is a seller. It's not necessarily like Etsy has anything against handmade or has anything against print on demand. I think that they're okay with both, but in this case, it is for a handmade product.
There are a lot of people who have successfully made their career on Etsy alone. That's honestly great. I wish that that was a viable route to go down for everyone, but there are some serious red flags with Etsy that I just couldn't ignore anymore, and I finally closed my store because of them. Etsy is a really good place to start whenever you're first getting started, but please don't just rely on Etsy. Everything's
very important, right, Chris? Like, don't rely on Etsy.
So I was hoping she was going to get there because she said, hey, a lot of people are making their entire business on Etsy. That's okay. That's not ideal, right? And it's not something you and I would ever say to do. Just like I wouldn't want to be 100% dependent on even a Shopify site necessarily, unless I have some external resources like my own email list. I don't ever want to see people who are building a giant business and then having someone else have the keys to the kingdom, right? Etsy shuts you down for whatever reason. That then immediately goes away. That's a terrifying prospect. It sounds like she went the exact opposite direction.
Yep.
Not knowing that Shopify can also shut you down potentially, right? But keeping that in mind, that is, a little bit safer ground to start with, but I'd like to see a little bit of diversity. I think the key here though is, and you and I are both big advocates of this, Etsy's a great place to get started because you don't have to learn all of the marketing lessons. Once you have loyal customers, you have an email list, you have some of those kinds of things, you can make a move like she did, if that's what you choose to do, or if Etsy forces you into that situation.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's listen to why she decided to close.
It started off really smooth in the very beginning. I was getting sales here and there and getting sales on my website. It's a low cost start. You just have like the 60-cent fee. I didn't mind paying the extra money to get the sales over there. I had a ring that kind of went viral on Etsy for about 2 weeks where I was getting multiple sales a day, sometimes 10 to 12 sales in one day. That was probably a year into having Etsy. So I was already an established seller. I don't remember how many sales I had at the moment, but it was enough to know that I wasn't a fake Etsy account or that I wasn't a scammer. I had almost 5 stars, no complaints, and they decided to put a hold on my funds, which is something that they are allowed to do. However, when I was getting started, I did not know that that was something that they could do. I also never would have expected that they would put a hold on someone's account that's been selling for over a year. This is a huge deal because a lot of people who are selling their handmade goods need those funds in order to purchase the materials to make the product that other people are buying.
Yeah. Well, okay, Chris, and I know you wanted to strike a point there. I don't think the holding of the funds should be an issue for a business. Like you have a credit card, you can probably just charge this stuff and then pay it in 30 days. They're not going to hold usually longer than 30 days, at least that I'm aware of. Chris, what did you have on that?
Yeah, so she pointed something out here, Scott, that I think is really interesting for Etsy sellers. She said, I didn't think they would do it for people who were over a year old. One of the flags that they put into their system last year was that they said, basically, if there's a huge spike in sales, and she mentioned I think she said she had a ring that went viral for like 2 or 3 weeks. If they see, okay, Scott, you're selling 20 a day, and all of a sudden you go to 200 a day, that's when that triggers that hold. So you can be around for 6 years. And if you have a massive spike in demand, not something that happens every year, right? You're doing 20% more than last year, but you go from 2 to 200 a day. Etsy goes, whoa, there's something going on here. And they're doing that as a little bit of CYA for themselves. And they're doing that as a little bit of CYA for the customers, right? And we have to understand that that is a possibility. If you find yourselves in that situation, and it's not just handmade sellers, right? It can happen to print-on-demand people too. Yes, typically you're going to have lower cost if you are a print-on-demand seller than if you're hand-making rings, right? But that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect those people as well. I think resource number one there would be your credit card. As long as you're delivering the orders, that money is going to come through. Step number 2, there are ways of getting funding for orders. And if you're a Shark Tank fan, Scott, I know that you are. That's like one of the things. They're like, oh, do you have purchase orders? Awesome. Well, let me just fund your inventory, right? I'm going to fund the next 1 million orders. There's a lot of organizations. I know 8Fig is one. I don't know what their integration looks like off the top of my head with something like Etsy, but if this ever happens, there are a lot of organizations that are out there that can help you get the funding that you need in the short term. They will take a small percentage, but if you find yourself in that situation where you need that cash, you can definitely get it. There's always going to be resources to get it. So it's inconvenient, but it shouldn't be business ending for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's keep going.
And so I had over $1,000 on hold with Etsy that they would incrementally release like $20, $10. And that went on for about 4 months, which was honestly very, very, very frustrating. There wasn't anything I could do about it. There wasn't anyone that I could reach out to. Thank God that I had the revenue from my website to cover the cost of the goods from those sales. Otherwise, I would have had to reach into my own pocket to purchase the materials for those goods. This is something that I don't think that a lot of people know about, and I don't think that a lot of people would be prepared for it, especially if what you sell cost a lot to produce. Not only could this put you in a really hard financial situation.
Scott, one other thing I wanted to point out here is having your own website is not a solution to that problem.
Right.
Scott, you've used PayPal for things, right? As both a buyer and a seller. Have you ever had PayPal put a hold on your seller funds?
Yeah, I have.
Right. It happens with other payment gateways as well. And so having your own site is not necessarily a solution to that problem. You're less subject to random whims of people, but Stripe can put a hold on your funding. That's who powers Shopify payments, at least they used to. PayPal, right? Any of these payment processors, if they see something they think is weird, it's in their terms of service to put a hold on some or all of those funds. So understanding that this is something that can happen and understanding that there are resources like 8Fig or some of the other places that will do inventory type lending to small businesses, or just having a credit card with a little bit of a limit on it, that helps keep you safe no matter where you are. Yes, Etsy has started cracking down on this in a big way because it was one of their anti-spam measures that they rolled out last year, but it can happen anywhere. And that's something I think she may not be aware of because it's never happened to her outside of Etsy. And that's where she first experienced it. But I know we've had that happen with PayPal. I know horror stories of people who have had that happen with Stripe and PayPal and other payment processors. So that's something I wanted to point out.
Yeah. I just want to add that, she had said, I didn't want to, go into my own pocket. I understand that. But when you're running and building a business, sometimes that's your startup, right? Like we all had to reach into our own pocket. So I don't think it's as big of a deal, at least at this point, to where I would say I'm pulling off, I'm pulling out. I'm just curious to see what happens here. So let's just keep watching.
Situation, but it could ruin your reputation on Etsy if you're not able to deliver because they're holding your money.
But there's no reason to me, like why would you not be able to still fulfill even though you didn't get paid? And now I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying like you still should be able to create the product. Like it's almost like before you sell the product, I would think you'd have the product, and I don't want to say made, but you'd have the resources to make it. That's how I would look at it. Now I know it's a custom order, handmade, whatever, but I'm feeling a little like, I guess, where she's not being realistic with like how it really is when you're running a business. But let's just keep watching.
Well, I think that's a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make, right? Is they assume that cash flow, they should always be running off cash flow. And when you're first getting started, that's when you're most likely to run into this problem. If you've been in business for a few months or a few years, you should be setting aside that product cost. And this is a mistake every time I look at books for an e-commerce business, and I'm not an accountant, but I go, like, where is your product cost? Are you setting that aside? And if the answer is no, and you're operating off of cash flow, that's terrifying. And it might mean, Scott, that you have to spend another few months at your 9 to 5 or doing whatever it is that you do before you go full time in this side hustle. But if you can build up a little bit of that war chest for inventory, again, doesn't necessarily apply when you're first getting started, but that's what a credit card might be for, right? If you find yourself in a situation where your sales blew up, like she potentially did, that's when we need to look at those other funding sources, right? And it's about being resourceful and trying to figure out where we can get that capital from in order to make those decisions. again, this is a very frustrating thing. And anytime somebody wants to hold some of your money, it's extremely frustrating, but we can plan for this. And it's a mistake that I see a lot of businesses make. And we're guilty of this as well sometimes. So it's not to say that we're better than anybody else, but it is something that's at least to some extent preventable and plannable.
Yeah, for sure.
With Etsy, once that happened, honestly, my mentality around it was never the same. I knew from the very beginning that I didn't want to ever rely on Etsy to produce my sales. And from the very beginning, it's never surpassed the sales that I was able to get from my own website. I do want to make a video about how to get sales from social media and marketing and all those things, because it is absolutely possible to drive your own sales and not rely on someone like Etsy. So if you feel like you need to start on Etsy, please start a website first so that you don't have to be fully reliant on them, because you have zero control over your money. And
so here's where I'm going to say I would be different. It's like, for someone to start a website, there's so much involved in a website to get started that you could quit before you actually get started, because you're going to, yes, Shopify makes it easy, but there's still so much more work that goes into that. And that's why I'm a big fan of using a platform to launch the business. And we've done that before, where we talk about Etsy as being your launch platform. But if there was one thing I would say, build your email list. That's a lot easier. Let's build the email list. And then if this did happen, then you could quick whip up a Shopify store, even if it was a basic, and then drive people there or to another platform, So I would say the email list would be, yes, I would say if you can from day one, start building your email list, not necessarily like you have to build a website. So I would say that's where I would differ on that.
They can take it away at any moment, and that's not safe for any business owner. My second strike with Etsy, and honestly the last one, I was not going to give them a third. After 3 years of being a seller on Etsy and having 166 sales, great reviews, they suspended my account. It had something to do with my social, and when I moved from the UK to the States, I had to change on Etsy the country that I was in, which was fine. Whenever I updated my address, it wanted me to update my social security information in there, and I did that immediately. So I uploaded a picture of my passport, my name, my social, which they already had my social, and they still suspended my account. I had a banner notification saying, upload a copy of my driver's license and verify my social security number, and I would have an updated email within 10 days. About 3 months later, I still never had an updated email. I have my social security card. I know my social security number by heart. And no matter what I did, I could not get it unsuspended. A huge downside to Etsy is that their customer service is garbage. Everyone that I've spoken to when I've managed to get in contact with a human has always been very kind, and that's great and all, but their ability to actually help you is slim to none. When I reached out to them about my account being suspended and let them know that my social security number is correct in there, they were completely perplexed. They had no clue what was going on, why it wasn't working. And so I had spoken to the person, and then they told me that they would look into the matter further and reach out via email with what they found. A few days later, I did get an email from someone at Etsy support, and they told me they weren't sure what was going on, to try and add my middle name, add my middle initial, which
I just want to let people know I'm not laughing at her. I'm laughing that Etsy is this like unorganized, unaware, like that's really what I'm laughing at. So I just want to let you guys know I feel her pain.
I'm laughing for a similar and different reason. I'm laughing because I just had this same exact experience, but with Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily an Etsy specific thing. It wasn't my social. In this case, it was the business information and the EIN. And if you guys aren't aware that, it's essentially a business's social security number, right? It's the way that they identify it on the government documents. And Amazon had some new requirements because of some of the federal laws that had changed. You had to go in and update it. They mailed a postcard and you had to type in the number. That got done 9 months ago, right? Nothing in the dashboard, nothing. I get an email saying your account has been suspended for failure to update the information. I went through the same rigmarole, right? Amazon's a little bit better about getting you in contact with a human being. Scott, I got somebody on the phone. I said, my account is suspended. Can you tell me why? And he went, your account's not suspended. I said, yeah, it is. Here's the screenshot. Here's everything. He goes, oh yeah, it doesn't show suspended on the back end at all. So same exact situation. They said, hey, you didn't update your information. I don't know why your account is suspended because it's not showing. Oh yeah. In this one weird place, it's showing as suspended, but it also says you have all of the correct information, right? So this can happen anywhere, and I'm only laughing because it happened to me literally 3 weeks ago on a different platform, and they're like, "We have all your information. It all matches with what's on our record. You typed in the stupid pin that we mailed you, and yeah, we don't know. So it'll probably be a little while." And 2, 3, 4 days later, they finally got back to me and said, "We think we got your account back, but it might happen again." So that, it
Crazy.
got resolved in our case, but the same thing, something weird was stuck in the system. Again, not necessarily an Etsy specific thing, something that can happen pretty much anywhere because they do have some requirements for information. But when you pile that on to holding her funds, I understand where you start to have that build up frustration, especially with Etsy.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to listen to a little bit more. We probably won't listen to the entire thing. I'll link it up in the description so you guys can watch the entire thing if you want to. You can comment to her, like whatever you want to do. But I will say the big lesson here should be, yes, we do not want to depend on a platform. Our platform's going to have weird stuff happen like this here. Yes. What should you be doing? Building a website from scratch at first? I wouldn't personally do that. I personally would start the email list. If you are interested in building an email list and you want to know how, we actually put together a guide. It's our email list building playbook. We'll go ahead and, if you want a copy of that, just put email in the comments and then we'll go ahead and make sure that you get a copy of that. Just put email in the comments and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that, because I've had so many people say, I wish I would have known about building the email list sooner. And I've actually said that in other businesses that I've had. That's why I've learned my lesson. That would be the easiest way to build an additional channel, because that is a channel that you have control over. So I would say definitely make sure that you make that a priority. Let's listen in a little bit more here and see if she has anything else. But we pretty much realized she's fed up. She's frustrated because they closed her account down or suspended her account again. And this time it had to do with identity and she doesn't know why. And they didn't know why.
I did all of those things. I tried every variation of my name. And if those things didn't work, then I would need to reach out to the Social Security Administration, which makes zero sense. Imagine I reach out to the Social Security Administration and say, hey, my Etsy account won't verify my Social Security number. Is something wrong? Not only would I not get a response for something like that, but they would probably laugh at how dumb that question is. Even when I was in England, my Social Security number was verified on Etsy. So it was clear to me that this was something on their end that they just didn't want to dig further into. It was either a technical glitch or whatever, but it was very clear that I was not going to get any support from them. And so I decided to leave Etsy. It is terrifying to me that some people have built their entire livelihood on this platform that has so little control into helping their makers and sellers. Not only is their customer service completely limited, hard to reach, but they honestly do not advocate for their sellers on their platform. The platform is meant to be for handmade goods, handmade gifts, handmade crafts, and they've completely allowed their platform to be overrun by cheap Chinese-made products that have been ripping off people's designs. I've seen so many small creators that have had their designs, pictures, everything stolen by these companies that are mass-producing products with silver-plated jewelry or fake gold, and they don't do anything about it.
Okay, so yeah, so I agree with what she's saying. There is like there's a lot of copycats. Etsy has allowed the making of cheap products that aren't handmade. I get her side of it because she is 100% handmade, but I also look at it Etsy's side is that they are trying to allow their customers to have a wider selection because they noticed that they weren't going to be able to survive as a company if all they did was rely on handmade. So I understand her frustration with that, but I do think Etsy made a good move is to allowing these other products. Now, what I will say is they do not do a good job of regulating and kind of seeing what is knockoffs, what is being trademark violations, like all the Disney products, the Taylor Swift products, like all of the trademark stuff that they're not enforcing. That I see as a big, big problem. And I agree with her. Hey, kudos to her. Go off, build your website, learn to drive traffic like that. There isn't
So am I still here? Did I disappear or did Scott disappear? That's the real question. There he is. He's coming back. I see him back. There he is. What did you do?
StreamYard just decided to kill me today. Let me go ahead and pull that back. Yeah.
I think we're slowly learning that it's just screen sharing through StreamYard.
I guess. So
hang on.
Oop, yeah, there you go.
Just to get you back in the right spot.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so I totally agree with her frustration, and for her being a handmade seller, and for her building her own website and learning the marketing side of things. Like, to me, that's a more advanced e-commerce business. Like, to start there can be intimidating for a lot of people, but that's her choice on what she wants to do. And hey, kudos to her for doing that. I still think Etsy is a great platform. I think it's a great platform to get started on because it takes all of that learning curve of an e-commerce business out of the mix, and really just understanding what people are searching for on a platform, how to deliver something that they are looking for. It helps you with learning business at a slower level or a slower pace. But should you have your own e-commerce store? That's up to you. Should you have your own email list? Absolutely 100%. Because if this had happened to her and she wasn't technically shut down, she was suspended, so we don't know how long that could have lasted. But if this did happen, she could have then just taken her email list and let them know, hey, having an issue with Etsy, but here's all my stuff over here. And then you can continually drive traffic over to your new entity. So Chris, any last words or comments on her situation or anyone else that's maybe experiencing this or thinking about leaving the platform?
No, I don't think she's actually wrong on any of the reasons that she's upset, right? Like, any of the reasons that she shut down, I totally get, right? Scott, it's the stuff you and I have been screaming about on live streams for the past few months. Basically since the mock-up apocalypse last fall, we've been screaming about a lot of those things, like the ability to get in contact with a real human being, some of those kinds of things. And I understand, especially if you're in the situation that it sounds like she's in, where she said, look, it's just not worth my time. I'm making more on my own website anyway. Cool. The caution that I would have for people selling on Etsy is that selling on your own website is a very different set of skills, right? You might have to call Liam Neeson, who knows, but it's one of those things where if you have an e-commerce or a marketing background, you can get away with doing that a little bit sooner. If you're more on the artistic side, or you haven't launched and run your own business, you're not familiar with how to drive traffic, you're not familiar with all of those kinds of things, then you probably don't want to start there. You want to start with, for lack of a better term, Scott, some training wheels, right? You want to have somebody who's going to be driving a lot of that traffic for you. That's where a platform like Etsy comes in really handy. They let you focus on the startup portion of the business, which is really defining your niche, getting those first sales under your belt, and figuring out what will sell to your audience without you having to do that and master Facebook ads and figure out how to set up a Google AdWords account and figure out your email list all at the same time. If that's a situation you find yourself in, I would give the opposite advice and say, start on Etsy, start where the traffic is. And then when you feel like you have a little bit of your feet under you, don't ever become dependent on Etsy, Amazon, Shopify. Don't be dependent on a single platform or a single channel. But once you have those feet under you, then figure out how to do all of the website setup stuff, figure out the ad side of things, figure all those other things out once you have some revenue coming in and you have a little bit of a foundation built. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's good. Awesome. So yeah, and I would, again, I'll end with, understand that yes, on Etsy, you're building on someone else's platform, but it's a great place to tap into all of the traffic that they are creating and that they are advertising to get people to the platform. And then it's our job to build our customer base and build our real e-commerce business from the efforts of starting on Etsy. So that's what I would say. All right. With that being said, Chris, and I know there's people have some remarks, some questions, and anything we need to address there. We've got one more thing I did want to tackle. Shouldn't take too long, but it is a new Etsy scam that we just wanted to bring to your attention. Any questions or anything, Chris, before we move on?
Mostly just people making fun of my confused face when you got kicked out. So I think we're good. Bailey said the tables have finally turned. Scott shares his screen and he gets booted off. So it's just one of those things apparently that happens. Who knew? But I think we're good to go into that last little thing, and then whatever questions pop in, we can go from there.
All right, cool. Let's see here. Okay. Let me get out of there. Where are we? There we are. Yay. Okay. So I was alerted that there is a new Etsy scam, and well, I wanted to make sure that you are aware of it. So if you see this, you are not going to fall for this new Etsy scam. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So this way here, you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to have Chris Schaefer weigh in on this as well. So Chris, this is something that was posted inside of a Facebook group, and I am going to read it, and then we are going to dig in. Here it is, by an anonymous member. Anyone else got a message like this? When following the link of the QR code, they say Etsy is implementing new payment methods, and I need to fill in my bank card details and state the current exact amount in my bank account. I went back to my app to check the message in the box, and it was empty. Might be a new scam. Yeah, I'd say so. The first red flag is this, all right? And this is for anyone that is seeing a message or ever being asked for this type of information. Fill in your bank card details and state the current exact amount in my bank account. Chris, why would that be a red flag?
One, because Etsy already knows the balance of your bank account that's attached to your Etsy account. The first thing they have you do, Scott, when you're creating an Etsy account is connect your bank account through Plaid, which has API access to your bank account. So they already know what's in your bank account. And also, they don't really need to know what's in your bank account. There's no reason they would need to know how much money you have, right? So if they absolutely needed that for whatever reason, they could probably get it through the Plaid API. But they don't need you to fill in a form. They don't need any of these additional things. And there's actually a variation of this without the QR code, where they're just saying, hey, send us your email address in this chat and we'll email you the information. They then send the same email that the person was getting on this landing page that says, hey, you need to update your information. You need to tell us exactly how much is in your bank account. There's no reason they need additional banking information. And if they did, it would come officially from Etsy. You'd probably hear us talking about a new policy change where you need to go in and do these things. If you get a random email like this, one, do not scan a QR code that shows up in your Etsy inbox ever. Etsy would not be sending a QR code. That would just be crazy of them when they could put a link in the email, right? Like they would be messaging you with a direct link. Two, if they're asking you for information that they already have, they probably don't need it, right? So if it's information you know they already have, like your bank account information, like your social security, be extremely skeptical of those things. But the very first thing, Scott, that stands out to me there is just they're going to temporarily suspend your account until the verification process is completed. Do you know what they would have done before they sent that message? If that's coming from Etsy,
they would have
suspended your account.
Yeah.
Like, they don't tell you they're going to suspend your account unless you do something. They go, hey, we need this information. And you guys may have heard me tell the story about how this happened with Amazon recently, right? They said, hey, you didn't fill out this one thing, even though it turns out that I did, right? If it's a legal requirement, if it's something they're requiring you to have to create the account and that information isn't there, they suspend you so that you don't put them in problems. They're not going to send you an email and say, hey, scan this QR code and go God knows where, right? This is something people are doing. There's a few variations of this floating around right now. Please do not scan this. Do not click on any links that tell you you have to fill out information you've already given to Etsy. Even if it looks like it's coming from them, there's a very small chance that it is. And if they actually needed something, they would have suspended you before they sent you a thing saying, we're going to suspend you until you fill this out, even though you haven't filled it out.
Let me just go ahead and briefly run through this, though. I just want to read some of the verbiage. Dear seller, Etsy is implementing an enhanced verification process to ensure security. As a result, sales in your store have been temporarily suspended until the verification process is complete. To restore the operation of your store and receive new orders, please follow the instructions. 1, scan the QR code using your phone's camera or take a screenshot and go into the photos. 2, click on the QR code and follow the link with instructions. If you are unable to scan the QR code, please provide your email address, check the spam folder, hence spam message. As soon as the verification is complete, your Etsy store will resume operations immediately. We appreciate your attention. Etsy. So listen, this here is a scam. And I think really the important part here is where it said in the message, also, it basically had said, fill in your bank card details. So when you would go here and scan that code, that's when it's going to say, hey, fill in your bank card details and state the current exact amount in the bank account. I don't know anybody that's ever for a verification has ever asked for the balance inside of your account. Who has ever done that?
So you know how sometimes, Scott, you'll register like a credit card with a new service and they'll say, we're going to send a temporary transaction. We need you to tell us how much that transaction was. It's usually like 3 to 5 cents. That's where you would see that. They're never like, tell us exactly how much is in your account before we tell you what our pricing is, right?
Crazy.
Which is probably something we should implement. I think that's our new pricing strategy. How much do you have? Oh my God, it's exactly that amount. Who knew?
Crazy.
Right? And so it's one of those things where like, it's easy to get caught up in this if you're not super tech savvy. And there's a few places people could see this showing up. It could show up in your email, in which case you can check the email address. If it's showing up in your Etsy messages, the fact that you are logged into your account and there's not giant banners everywhere telling you that your account is suspended should probably let you know that this is a scam, even if it doesn't show up in the spam or junk folder in your Etsy messages and it somehow makes its way to your inbox. If they're telling you that your account is suspended and you seem to be able to do everything just fine, go ahead and ignore that message. And if it was truly a problem, Etsy will let you know by actually suspending the account and letting you remedy the situation at that point. Don't follow these links. Do not scan a QR code. Etsy has no reason to ever send you a QR code. They would send you a link or they would tell you to go into your dashboard and click on the settings button or whatever the thing is that they need you to update. They're not going to send you externally. They're going to point you in the direction where you need to add the information and let you go from there.
Cool. All right. So that pretty much wraps up everything that we wanted to cover today. We went a little bit over, but a lot of stuff we wanted to cover. The burnout thing, please go back if you have to. Go through what we shared with you and write down what your goals are, but more importantly, like what your action steps are. Like what are the drivers to help you? I think that's a big one. Hopefully that helped you. If you did or are feeling burnout, it's a thing, it's a real thing, and our mental health is so important. So I really wanted to do this. I know Chris wanted to do it for you guys as well. And it's probably something that we'll bring up again in the future just because it is so darn important. But we did cover a lot. You might want to go back and listen to this one again. The other thing is I wanted to kind of remind you guys that, well, there's a couple things I want to remind you on. Number one, we have our Etsy shop audit that's going live tomorrow. Okay. We have our every Thursday here on Brand Creators. We have our Etsy shop audits. We are posting a brand new one tomorrow. It'll be, I believe it's 22 or maybe 23. I think it's 22 though. But that one's going to be aired 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So look out for that. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure that you are. It's a good one too. It's a mother-daughter duo, and it's where she is helping her daughter and her daughter's helping her basically come up with their college tuition. She's a 15-year-old kid and her mother is helping her, and it's really awesome to see. And it was a really good shop audit. So you're definitely going to want to tune in for that one. We also have next Tuesday, we're going to be doing another live batch recording session with our Backstage Pass Club. This is where we batch record our Etsy shop audits. We have 3 new ones, and we sit down for about 3 hours because each person's about 45 minutes, give or take. And then we do the recordings for these Etsy shop audits that air on the YouTube channel. But generally, we're about 4 to 6 weeks out as far as when they air. You can sit in on these. That's our Backstage Pass Club. If you'd like to be a club member, you can either click on the link here on YouTube somewhere and it'll say join, and it's $9.99 a month. and you can join us. So it's under $10. You can ask questions live there, and you can also be there as we're doing it live. So this way here, you can kind of see it in real time. You can also hear the back and forth banter in between, because we do a lot of that as well. But if you'd like to join us there, you can click that link, join, or you can go to brandcreators.com/join or club. I believe it is brandcreators.com/club will get you there as well. All right. So we got a lot of stuff planned, a lot of cool things coming up. One thing that Chris and I talked about this morning, and I don't know the exact days, but I'm going to have to probably figure that out. But we are just a couple, 2-3 months from Q4. Can you believe it? It's insane. Chris and I last year, we did a Q4 boot camp where we got ready for Q4 in advance. So it's kind of like your football season where you do pre-season, or you do like boot camp, or not even boot camp. I guess it's just camp, right? Football camp. Well, this is going to be Q4 camp. We only do it once a year. We are going to be setting a date. It's going to be 4 weeks. We're going to meet once a week for 4 weeks. And every single week, we are going to be preparing and getting ready for Q4. If you would like to be part of that, stay tuned. If you're not yet on our email list, you're probably going to want to do that. And the way that you can do that is to start with first, number one, probably downloading our 100K roadmap. And if you want access to that, just put 100K in the roadmap or in the comments, and then you'll get the roadmap. That'll also put you on our email list, which will also then allow us to let you know when we're going to be doing this. We're going to probably have a wait list, and then from there, we're probably going to do an early bird thing. We have a lot of stuff planned, but we are going to be doing that, and it is going to be coming up soon. Okay. And we're going to let you know more details on that. We're still working out all the fine print. All right. So with that all being said, that's going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and joining us on this live stream. We will be back here next week, same place, same time, another topic, and we are going to help you. Okay. We're going to help you grow on Etsy, but also off of Etsy. All right. So with that all being said, guys, thank you so much. Take care, take action, have an awesome, amazing day. We'll see you right back here on the next episode. Take care, guys.